Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about action overrides and extensions. This is one of the ways you can customize VerticalThird's combat system to your liking, and in some cases, completely replace certain aspects of it. Even in those situations, you are still able to take advantage of many of VerticalThird's features. To follow along, you can open the level example display map. Right away we will click the three dots by the play button. Verify new editor window is checked, and click advanced settings. Let's make sure always on top is checked. Now we can close this window. We are now going to go to World Settings, which you can go to Windows, World Setting, and it'll appear on the right. We will click the magnifying glass by the default pawn. We can double click to open it up. First thing we're going to do is create new event graphs. This is going to keep our code clean and organized. We're going to have one for overrides and extensions. Right where it says graphs, we can click the plus sign to create new ones. Starting with the override graph, we're going to right click on the graph and search for event override. We will click on the override ID, drag a pin off, and click on switch on int. We will repeat this process on the extension graph. This time, search for event extension. Once again, let's click on the extension ID, drag it off, click on switch on int. On both of these, we can now click on add, and we will create 3 points on each of them. And we're going to drag off on each of these points at print string. And don't think of these as just a string print. Think of these as your custom code. Whatever you want to add at these points is what you can put in here. We're just going to keep it basic for now. You can add to the current combat system, trigger a world event, start a cinematic or sequencer event, initiate something that changes the level. You can even use the overrides to make this have nothing to do with combat and replace it with your custom code. The possibilities really are endless, and it's all about modifying VerticalThird to your game. I'm going to speed through this a little bit, but feel free to take your time. If it is an override, I'm making sure to print override. If it is an extension, I'm making sure to print extension. Now I'm going to click and drag on the tab for this blueprint and just dock it into the top. Now we're going to open up a data table that we can use to test this. In the bottom left, we can click on the content drawer, click on the VerticalThird folder, and search for Projectile Standard AOE. And we can double click to open this up. Just to synchronize our view a little bit, I'm going to right click at the top and collapse all, and then expand the first row. With the VerticalThird override extension system, you are able to tap into our entire input system, but customize your code how you want it to be. Extensions allow you to extend the current VerticalThird combat system, or you can utilize the extension and the override system to customize your code even further. For overrides, you're choosing not to spawn the VerticalThird action. This will allow you to replace it with your own code. For overrides, statistic changes and action collection will be removed. Even then, you'll be able to utilize many of the features of the VerticalThird input system. This can be channeled options, cooldowns, movement options, input such as requiring a mouse button down or animation lock, targeting such as range or choosing a location, positional requirements like requiring facing target, line of sight, or a position, camera changes such as field of view, your user interface, and essentially the whole action loading system. You can have your appearance, such as the cast time or the animations you use, and finally, the removing or granting of resources for the cast. In the action data table is where you set if you use action extensions or overrides. There are 2 extensions for the start of the cast and the end of the cast. And finally, you can set the override. You may have guessed it, but you can see we have a simple number or index right here. These index will correspond to the ones we created on your character blueprint. We will enable the Action Start extension and jump into the game. We're going to hit play and readjust our windows so our play window is on the left and our data table we will drag out from the top and put on the right. Now I'm going to jump to the teleporter and go to Action Testing. It's important to note that the input system is mostly saved to a variable when the action is loaded. So when we're testing, we need to make sure we reload our action kit consistently. I'm going to walk over to the Spawn Actor node and search for Target and spawn a target dummy. On the left-hand side, we will search for Projectile and scroll down the list to find the Kit Example Display Projectile. We will load the kit and check for auto reload. Within this kit, the action we loaded was the right click, the Projectile Standard with AOE. When we cast our action, you can see at the cast start, it will execute that custom code. In this case, it was a print string. Now I'm going to enable the extension end, this time setting the index to 1. And I did forget to reload my kit here, but after I reload my kit and cast the action again, you will see both the start and end extension. So as you see, when I begin my cast, that's when the first extension goes off. When the cast ends, that's when the next extension goes off. As a quick note, the extension end triggers right after the cast time ends, whereas the projectile has a slight delay on it. That delay is actually set in the action collection to make it line up better with the animation. Finally, we have the override. And in this case, it will trigger the override, but you notice no projectile spawned. And like I mentioned earlier, this is because we are completely saying, do not spawn the VerticalThird action system. Instead, I will execute my own custom code. And you are still able to utilize the extensions for this. Some final notes here are that you are able to continue to add indexes to your extension overrides and have them do different functions. Since these are all based around a specific character blueprint, you're able to have different overrides and extensions per character or per AI, etc. The last point to make here is because these overrides and extensions are per character, you could technically have two different enemies use the same action, but have different effects because they have their own extensions and overrides. The last thing to note is that these events are called on this server, so if you are using multiplayer, keep that in mind. If you are using this as single player, it will execute the code as if you were the server, and so you don't have to worry about it. That's it for this one. See ya.